Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Kuiper Labs. In today's video we're going to discuss the concept of weathering. So firstly we're going to go over what is weathering, and then we're going to go through the three main types of weathering that we experience: physical, chemical and biological. So what do we mean by weathering? Well, weathering is the breaking down of rocks into smaller pieces. So where we have existing rocks that over time and through a range of different processes that they break down into loose material like sediment that then is able to be carried away or transported to a new place. It can make soil, it can also then be moved and then can be bed down to make new sedimentary rock. And a range of different changing processes. And it happens in a number of different ways, depending on the environment in which the rock is found. So, the first type of weathering is what we call physical weathering, or the other name is mechanical weathering. So where we're talking about it like a physical kind of changing process that causes the rock to break down. So it ultimately comes back to the effect of temperature changes on rock. Okay, so the environment in which the rock is found and how the temperature it's exposed to will change over the course of a day, over the seasons, over many, many years in time. Causes the rock to change. So for example, this here is one of the Devil's Marbles in the Northern Territory. You can see it's split right down the middle. And this is a very, very large rock. That's kind of as large as a person would be in the middle here. It's not just, oh, well, it's a little thing by the side of the road. So you can see this split that's happened here. Now there's two main processes that are involved in this kind of mechanical or physical weathering. The first is called freeze-thaw action, or cryofracturing. So where this idea of water getting into a rock and freezing, which causes the rock to break apart over time. So we have a little crack in the rock that forms from a range of different things, and then water gets into the crack. What happens is that then as it freezes, due to colder temperatures overnight, in particular in desert places, it freezes, and when water freezes, it expands. It takes up more space than it did before. And then, the sun comes out, it warms up, and it goes away. And then the process repeats over and over again. What happens is that this crack that was there at the start then gets larger and larger and larger until eventually it gets down to the point at which the rock gets cracked because of this expansion, this force of the freezing water, the ice. The other process that forms is what's called exfoliation. Now this isn't the sort of thing you might do for skincare regime, but this is the idea that these outside layers of the ground, we get these cracks that are parallel to the land. So rather than cracking down, like we would have seen in that the last example, these are cracks that run across. And what happens is it's just due to the changes in pressure that exist on the rock as it's being pushed towards the surface, or as it gets pushed up from pressure underneath. And so then it cracks across the top. Okay, so you can see some examples of these cracks that are lying here, and then these pieces that actually kind of get lifted up. And so it looks like there's all this stuff that should be in the middle here, but it's actually just these pieces that have been pushed to the surface. We also then get chemical weathering. So rather than the physical processes we've just seen, this is where we're talking about chemical reactions. It might be with water, it might be with things that are dissolved in water, or it might be gases that are in the air that actually cause changes to the chemical structure of the minerals in the rock. Okay, so you can see these holes that develop here due to the effect of acid on these types of minerals. You can see these little channels that have developed in this rock over here from water that's run over the surface and dissolved parts of the minerals. And you're seeing a similar sort of thing over here. Okay, and then we also get our characteristic beautiful red rocks that we have here in Australia, or like you see on the surface of Mars. So acid rain is one phenomenon that really affects this very strongly. This idea of in really industrial areas that the gases that get pumped into the air mix with the rain, making it acidic. When it rains back down, that acid then interacts with the minerals. Okay, so it might be things like dissolving, like we have here from the water that's picking up certain minerals as it goes past. Oxidation, which is this process of turning the iron oxide minerals in here to look like rust. Okay, so chemically it's the same kind of compound that actually is rust, but it's just based off the minerals reacting with the oxygen in the air and the water in the water vapor in the air as well. And then our last type of weathering is biological weathering. So essentially due to the action of living things. Okay, so living things interacting with their physical environment, so things like trees, and animals. Okay, so tree roots is a classic example where the tree roots extend down into the rock and crack it open as they work their way into a crack and then pushes through it. We see the same sort of thing with concrete paths and things in man-made structures, but this happens in rocks as well. Or you can also get animals that actually kind of burrow their way into the rock, and they might release certain chemicals which dissolve the rock based on where they are. Different lichens and things like that you might see on rocks, that they end up with these kind of worn away patterns as well. I haven't got an image to show you of that, but that can be the case too. Okay, so we discussed what we mean by weathering, this idea of breaking down larger rocks into smaller pieces to form sediment that can then be carried away, or can travel to a different place. We talked about physical weathering or mechanical weathering, with this freezing and thawing or exfoliation. We talked about chemical weathering, where we've got chemical reactions with things that are in the water or in the air, and biological weathering, where rocks break apart because of the action of living things. Right, thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.